All right, today we are diving deep into one of Athens' most complicated, most fascinating neighborhoods, Psiri. This place is a total bundle of contradictions, where gritty history and rebellious art crash right into modern-day cool on pretty much every corner. So let's start peeling back the layers.
And right out of the gate, you hit the central paradox of Psiri. So get this. One theory, and yeah, it's debated, is that its name comes from the Greek word for lice. Yep, lice. A little nod to a time when it was this down-and-out area for the lower classes. But today, it is the absolute Bohemian heart of Athens. So how on earth did that happen?
Okay, here's the game plan. We're going to tackle this in 5 parts. We'll look at its wild ride from an outcast quarter to a hip hotspot. Then we'll check out its architecture and incredible street art, listen to the soundtrack of its rebellion, meet the artisans keeping old traditions alive, and finally, I'll give you some tips on how to experience it like you actually live there.
To really get the Psiri of today, this vibrant artsy hub, we've got to go back. We have to start with its gritty and, let's be honest, pretty notorious past. Its whole identity was forged in struggle.
Just look at this timeline. The speed of change here is just wild. After Greek independence, it's a simple working-class neighborhood. Fast forward to the late 1800s, and it's a full-on slum. Then it just kind of sits there, decaying for decades. Until the 1990s, when this massive urban renewal project comes in and completely flips the script, turning it into the trendy hotspot we see today. That is a massive whiplash of a transformation. So, at the very heart of this rebellious past was this group, the Mungus to Psiri. Picture these guys, a swaggering, nonconformist crew of outcasts and criminals. They basically created the neighborhood's rebellious DNA. You could say their anti-establishment spirit is a ghost that still haunts the area, just in a very, very different way now.
Okay, so now let's talk about how all that rebellious history is literally written all over the neighborhood, on its walls and in the very bones of its buildings.
You can see this split personality just by looking up. On one side, you've got these beautifully restored neoclassical mansions, kind of a throwback to the hope of a new Greece. And then right next door, an old factory that's been reborn with this cool industrial chic vibe. It's like the buildings themselves are having a conversation between the past and the present.
And this is a perfect example. A textile factory from the 50s is now Mona Athens, this super chic boutique hotel. An old industrial building is now the Foundry, another cool hotel. Even a 19th century mansion has been turned into a hip hostel called City Circus. See, this isn't just a renovation, this is smart. It's taking history and strategically repurposing it to build a modern Bohemian brand.
But it's not just the formal architecture. The walls themselves have become a living, breathing art gallery. And this isn't just pretty decoration, not at all. The street art here is powerful stuff. It's an unfiltered voice that reflects all the raw emotion from Greece's recent economic crisis and political turmoil.
You'll see these massive, almost cinematic grayscale murals by artists like I&O. But then you'll stumble upon something really symbolic, like the memorial to Luka Nikos, the famous protest dog. A mural like that isn't just art. It's a direct connection to a time of intense social resistance. It turns a simple wall into a piece of living history.
Okay, so we've seen the neighborhood. Now let's listen to it. Because every neighborhood has a soundtrack, and Psiri's is the sound of rebellion, of hardship and just pure soul. It's called rebetiko.
People often call rebetiko the Greek blues, and that's a perfect description. It was literally born from the pain and displacement of refugees back in the 1920s. It became the anthem for anyone on the margins. You know, the same kind of outcasts, the manjes, who defined Psiri's whole underworld culture.
And the lyrics? They do not hold back. This is a poetic record of real struggle. We're talking about everything from exile and poverty to doing time in prison and just this deep-seated anger at authority. This was the music of people who felt like they had nothing left to lose. And man, you can hear that raw honesty in every single note. But what's absolutely incredible is the journey this music has been on. A sound that was once considered so dangerous, so subversive, that the government literally censored it, is now celebrated by UNESCO as a piece of global cultural heritage. I mean, how amazing is that? It just goes to show you how culture born on the fringes can end up defining the mainstream.
So, with all that history of grit and art swirling in our heads, let's look at the Psiri of right now. Because beyond the trendy bars and the nightlife, there's this living, breathing heritage of craft and community that still keeps the neighborhood grounded. You can still find these legacy artisans hanging on. There's Karas Leather. They've been there for 40 years. And then there's the incredible story of Melisinos, the poet sandal maker. His family has been making sandals here since 1920. Just think about it for a second. The Beatles, Jackie O, Sophia Loren, they all walked these very streets to get custom sandals made. That's living history with a serious global footprint.
And the food scene here perfectly sums up the whole neighborhood's evolution. It's like you've got two different worlds coexisting. On one hand, you have the old-school tavernas serving up traditional dishes with live rebetiko music. And on the other, you've got these swanky, high-end restaurants with fusion menus and these insane rooftop views of the Acropolis. They're right next to each other, serving completely different worlds.
Okay, last part. Let's pull this all together. With all these layers, how do you actually navigate this place and find its authentic heart?
First thing you need to know is what's right next door. You've got the famous Monastiraki flea market, and honestly, the best description I've ever heard is a marriage between what is fake and what is real. It's a total maze of mass-produced tourist junk, but there are some real gems hidden in there if you know where to look.
So, here's the key. You have to be a smart traveler. Get off the main tourist drag. The real treasures are always tucked away in the little side streets, especially as you start crossing over into Psiri itself. Look for actual workshops, places where you can see stuff being made. It's all about finding the real artisans, not just the people selling things.
This quote right here, it just nails the central problem. The very thing that makes Psiri so cool, its rebellious counterculture soul, is now the main thing it's selling. And that creates this constant underlying tension you can feel everywhere. I want to leave you with this one number, because it's so fundamental to understanding Psiri's soul. 1.5 million. That's the staggering number of Greek refugees who were displaced after 1922. That's the scale of the human tragedy that created the hardship that birthed rebetiko music. It's a powerful reminder of the deep, often painful history that's hiding just under the surface of all those trendy cafes. So why does any of this matter? Because Psiri isn't just some neighborhood in Athens. It's a living, breathing case study in how our cities are changing. It makes you ask those tough questions about what happens when the raw, authentic culture of a place becomes its biggest selling point. It's a story about revitalization, authenticity, and that global conversation about gentrification that's happening everywhere.
And that all brings us to the big final question, doesn't it? Is what we're seeing in Psiri today a vibrant, successful rebirth, or is it something else? Is it the soul of a rebellion that's been packaged up and sold to the highest bidder? The answer, I think, is probably somewhere in between, lost in those fascinating, contradictory streets. That's Psiri, deconstructed.